The next question we have to ask ourselves is, why tell a story? My 10th grade English textbook said that every story should have a moral. And at the time, I thought a moral meant something heavy-handed or related to morality. So this injunction really bothered me. I was like, okay, what's moral that I can tell and show very clearly? What's a bad thing? So I wrote a short story about a girl who stole like a pair of sunglasses and then felt horribly guilty and turned herself in. That was what I thought it meant to write a story with meaning. Then I realized that for a story to have a moral doesn't mean that all your characters have to follow some sort of strict moral code or be punished for their failures or disobedience. Now I kind of equate having a moral with having meaning. Does the story have some kind of meaning? And for me, the stories I enjoy best, it usually is some sort of meaning related to morality. But there's lots of different meanings that you can find in stories. And I think there's kind of a graph and a scale too, right, of meaning. So we've got less meaning, more meaning. Less entertaining, more entertaining. And you can see how there's quadrants, how the line can go this way, this way. So in this little corner, less entertaining, less meaning, I would put things like Waiting for Godot. And then more meaning, less entertaining, that would be some of your heavy-handed, very moralistic, you have those children's primers from the 1800s, right? All the stories, the bad are punished, the wicked are punished, and the good are rewarded. You've got like Pilgrim's Progress, right? How many times have I tried to read that book and failed? Because I know it's super high in meaning, but it's so boring to me. It's so hard to read. Maybe I should try again. But you jump over here to the more entertaining, less meaning category. There's lots of stuff I enjoy in that. That's just like, your normal fiction, the things you read for fun. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Aragon, Shadow and Bone. But my favorite category of these four on this quadrant is more meaning, high in meaning, and high in entertainment value. So examples there are going to be things like Chronicles of Narnia. Perfect example. Those are some of the best books ever written. Anything by C.S. Lewis almost could fall in that category. Anything fiction. It's very high in meaning. You can always take so much away from anything you read by him, but it's so entertaining. Like, man, I am not a huge sci-fi fan, but when I read his space trilogy, I couldn't set it down. The library didn't get me the second book or whatever fast enough, so I just bought it. Like, that is a sign that I really love a book if I actually buy it, because I can't wait to keep reading. So Little Women and Anne of Green Gables, I also find those pretty entertaining. So for me, some people find them a little less, but for me, they're high in meaning, high in entertainment value. That's where I believe the best literature, the best fiction rests, is in this square. And that's the direction I'm shooting. Of course, we're going to focus more on entertaining on our writing style right now, because I know there is some element of meaning to my writing, but if I could get it up into that category. Something I brought up earlier that I want to talk about a little bit more is the idea that you can find meaning in just about anything. Almost anything. I have read some things, like I said, Dada, nihilism. Man, I came away feeling like I had just wasted hours of my life, which I probably had. But almost anything, even if the author didn't really intend or try for some kind of meaning. And it's interesting too, because we all see the world through different lenses, through different paradigms. I'm reading Stephen Covey again right now, so of course I'm going to talk about the paradigms, but we all have this way we see the world, and that's also going to be the way that we interpret the world, right? So you and I, we could read the same thing and get completely different meanings out of it. And a lot of good literature has multiple meanings in it, right? Multiple themes. So sometimes I read a piece, you read a piece, I say, wow, I really love the focus on loyalty and friendship. And you say, wow, that bit about overcoming grief, overcoming loss. And I say, oh, okay, yeah, I saw that in there too. Didn't hit me as hard, but I saw that. And you say, oh yeah, I saw the stuff about loyalty. So a lot of times there's just multiple themes, multiple meanings that we can draw on in a piece. sometimes they can be a lot more specific and focused and individual and harder for other people to pick out. I mean, a lot of people who study scriptures, some book of scripture for their faith, they can draw a specific individualized meaning for their life from one verse, and someone else can get something completely different because they're at a different place in their life and they need something different. So that can happen in good literature too. I can say, wow, I read Frankenstein as a teenager, and I just felt like, this is made up example, by the way. Did not read this as a teenager, but it's a good book. I read this as a teenager, and I just felt such a connection to that monster. You know, he's created by this person who doesn't really want him. Nobody really wants him. He doesn't like his own body, his own self, right? That's one meaning you could draw from it in one period of your life. In another period of your life, oh, you've created something, or maybe you started a business or a club or some kind of group, and it's kind of getting away from you. And now you're reading Frankenstein thinking, I totally identify with Dr. Frankenstein. I had this vision. I wanted to try this thing. I started this, and now I don't know if it's beautiful or horrible, but I just kind of don't want anything to do with it anymore. There's 1,000 other ways that you could connect to that story depending on where you are in your life. And there's tons of other themes in it too, right? That have not as much to do with with their relationships. There's themes of abandonment, themes of displacement of responsibility. Not my problem. I mean, I created it, but there you could see it from an environmental standpoint of what we're doing to our planet. Tons of different ways that you could interpret a single work of literature or fiction, and none of those ways are right or wrong or better. That's not true. There are some interpretations are better than others. I've been in enough English classes to know that some people's interpretations are just stupid. But based on what your paradigm is, you're going to interpret a work through that paradigm. So I'm religious, and I'm a young mother, and I'm a woman, and I come from a specific income level. I come from a specific educational background and racial background, cultural background. All of those things are going to influence how I interpret a work or the meaning that I find in a story or a movie or a play or a show or whatever. I think it's really important to look for meaning everywhere, all around me in my life, but especially in the things I read. So even if I'm reading something that I don't enjoy or deeply disagree with, but I'm still able to find meaning in everything or learn from it. So one great example is Ernest Hemingway. Not a huge fan of him or anything that I've read by him, but in college I remember reading The Sun Also Rises. I read the whole thing, even though I hated it, and I remember thinking, this is so important, what this book is showing. Just the misery we can cause ourselves or other people when we're selfish or when we don't adhere to some kind of moral code. So I was able to take meaning away even from that book, even though I'm sure it's not what Hemingway had in mind when he wrote it, or the meaning that he would have maybe preferred for his readers. Because of my paradigm and the way I see the world, that's what I took away was, wow, I'm so glad that I have values and that I have more purpose than these characters, and that I will never end up like this or cause other people to end up like this, just this meaningless, miserable existence. So I've always been really glad that I read that book, and that's a book that I plan on introducing to my children someday, because I think it's a book with value. At least for me it was, even though I hated it. And I think we can make most things things of value for us if we put in the work to really think about them and ponder and sort through and sift and say, how does this fit in with the way I see the world? Does this change the way I see the world? Have I learned something that's maybe shifted my view? I think a lot of good fiction can do that when we read about people from vastly different backgrounds or time periods or parts of the world, and we go, oh, that's what that would be like. I think it builds empathy. But I think we can also kind of put some of our own worldview onto some things and say, oh, yeah, I do believe that making those choices will lead to these results, and making these choices will lead to those results. And this just reaffirms to me these beliefs that I have, and maybe it changes some of these beliefs that I have. I think the best writing can simultaneously challenge our worldview and also reaffirm parts of our worldview. And good writing doesn't have to do both. As long as it's doing one or the other, then it's really adding value to our lives. And I enjoy both aspects, having my worldview challenged and also seeing things that I'm like, yeah, nope, that fits. That just really strengthens this core belief of mine. What I strive for in my writing is somewhere on this scale of meaning and entertainment. That's what I want to provide to my readers. If I could be in this top corner over here, high entertainment and high meaning, that would be ideal.